Righto, in this video I'll be covering the use of sampling with Ableton's Simpler instrument. To kick it off, Simpler has three modes that can be selected on the left side of the instrument. There is Classic, One Shot, and Slice. Classic is your classic sampling instrument. One Shot where you play outright samples, and Slice to cut up things like drum patterns or even vocal chops to make new adaptations. Starting off, I'm going to be covering the Classic mode. Classic allows you to play a sample on a MIDI keyboard, or your computer keyboard if you're broke like myself. These can be placed on a MIDI note editor to make melodies and fun patterns. Classic mode gives you the option to change start times, end times, snapping, and looping functions. For example, I have an acapella that I found off my computer just to demonstrate this sampler.
Tell me how you feel now, it's the only thing I want.
So here we have the start time of it, or if I wanted to change where it started.
Tell me how you feel now. Now.
You have your end time to cut the sample short if you want it to be a little slice.
Now.
We could use the loop functions where we can make a little loop in our sampler. Let's take the now part.
Now.
And then shorten it. Yeah, you can do little intricate things like that. One shot mode gives you the exact same as classic mode. The only difference is it only does one shots. So there's no loop function, and by default it is set to trigger mode, so when you play a note it'll play all the way through.
Tell me how you feel now, it's the only thing I want.
And to stop it I'd have to go up and press stop. You can then switch this mode to gate, where it'll act like the classic sampler where when you hold the note it'll stay in, and when you let go it'll stop.
Tell me how.
Slice mode, however, changes the game. Slice mode automatically sets slices, or in other words, sets certain points in the sample which can be activated by separate keys. These slices can be changed by changing the way Ableton reads the waveform. By default, it'll be set to transient, so it'll be slicing around the transients of the track. This can be changed to beat, where it'll follow the beat grid of what you're set. In this case, it'll just come up with nothing at the moment, so I'll have to add my own slices in by double clicking. You can go to region, where it'll sort of go off the dynamic range of your track, and manual, where you just place your own. Slice mode is a little bit more handy for, let's say, drum patterns and vocal chopping, rather than synth work and melodies. So we'll go into a little bit more depth with the slicing modes. So here by transient, you'll probably recognize this from Pro Tools Beat Detective, where you have the sensitivity parameter. So pulling the sensitivity down will, as the same thing in Beat Detective, sort of bring down how harsh it is on the where the beats are and how harsh the transients are. If we slice by beats instead, we'll be getting slices based on your time grid. So in my case, I'm to 128 BPM at 4/4. So it'll give me every beat at 128 BPM in 4/4. So I could slice it up by that. I can then change the division of the slices. So if I wanted to have a little less room in there for more cuts, I can change it to 1/8, which will make it a lot sharper. Or if I wanted more cuts, I can halve it, go to one beat, etc, etc. Region will, like I said before, go towards the dynamic range of it. So, and this can be changed by the amount of regions that it searches for. Then there is manual. As I said before, you will click your own parts in, and you can use them to slice them later. Another parameter that isn't really looked at in the Simpler is the playback parameter. This gives you options on how you will play your sample. So if I switch it back to transient mode, I will get my transients, and the playback setting will be based on what I play at what time. So in the mono setting, I will only be able to play one key at a time. But if I switch it to poly, I'll be able to play multiple at the same time. And through, it give us the legato sort of feel where I can roll on to the next one. Now, because we're in Ableton and we're using samples, Ableton will come along with its warp function inside the sample now. This allows us to change the sound or change the timing of the sound to our will, getting it to change to whatever we really feel like. It'll be turned off by default, but to turn it on, just click warp, and you'll be automatically warped in beats as per usual. This can be changed between the normal warping modes here, like tones, texture, complex, and all the others. Now, regardless of the mode, Simpler comes along with different sort of parameters that are global to all the modes, such as you've got your separate clip gain. Clip gain is obviously, well, your clip gain. You can smash something up or you can make it quiet. You know the drill. Simpler also has its internal filter. This can be a real handy thing when it comes to cutting out low end that you don't really need.
Tell me how you feel now. It's the only thing I want. Chase my.
So then I can cut out 100 Hz without actually having to drag on an EQ. So it cuts out an extra bit of the chain. Simpler also comes with its own built-in LFO, which can be used to change the volume, the pitch, the panning, or the internal filter, which I just mentioned before. You have your standard waveform select, whether you want it in Hertz or if you want it snapped to the grid. As well as this, Simpler comes with its own built-in envelope for your own samples.
Tell me how you feel now. It's the only thing
All of these can be modified in greater detail in the Controls tab, which lies just right of the Sample tab. Now, none of this is really new over here. It's all just visual replications of your filter and your LFO, just to make it a little easier for people and give you a better idea of what you're actually doing. But over here, what isn't the same, you've got your own pitch envelope. Now, this can be used to making really like weird sort of vocal chops that you could use. That attack off because that doesn't work. Get rid of that release.
Tell me how you feel now.
But as well as this, you can switch it to your amplitude, which will actually give you a visual of your amplitude down the bottom. In the Controls tab, you're also given some global controls just down here. You have your pan, your spread, velocity, volume, transposition, detuning, and your glide, as well as your time for the glide. Using all these can make your experience with Simpler a lot better, and you can create some really interesting sounds. It's also quite ironic because this used to be what was known as Simpler because it was a simple sampler, but nowadays it's just as complex, if not more, than the actual built-in sampler. So as a little demonstration, I created a little melody using the acapella that I was using before. Create something like this. So that's just that little clip there, pitched down. So if I play it now. I've added reverb to give it some sense of space, no TT to compress it, multi-band compression to sort of bring it out in the mix a little more, some EQing, and some sidechain compression to some of the elements down the bottom, as well as some imaging with Ozone's Imager. And just like that, it's pretty easy to make some cool elements for your track. So here I've got a little top loop that I can add right here. Add a kick. And a bass that I made using Serum. If you combine those, you've already got yourself a pretty nice track. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with the physical modeling tutorial. Have a good one.